Hello and welcome to the Renegade Report. My name is Ramon.
And Jonathan, I guess, is present. We did that a
In,
bit back to front.
indeed, you are, Jonathan. For those who are watching, this is the first time I see Jonathan in maybe a month or so.
Well, some of us can't keep up with certain capitalists. It's tough to keep up with you.
Yeah, I think that's most of the country at this stage. But anyway, before we start answering the no questions at all, post questions in the chat for goodness sake. I thought I should share a little mini review of R.W. Johnson's new book. And I've completely forgot what it's called. But so, in the media, you get like these sort of micro stories, like, Melusi Kigaba did this, and Nomvula Mokonyane did this, and the Guptas did this, and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
He managed to take like a huge macro view of all of those stories and combine them into like a narrative thread that is like absolutely brilliant. If you want to know how BE destroys industries, if you want to know why, the ANC insists on having a Scandinavian health system in a third world country, if you want to know how Zuma, right to this day, is undermining Ramaphosa in the branches and in KZN specifically, R.W. Johnson is probably the best analyst on this. Like he's like right up there with Franz Grenier by far.
And what does he sort of say about the country? Because he usually has his finger on the pulse, so to speak.
So, I mean, he's still banging on about the IMF bailout sooner or later, and they will impose all sorts of restrictive economic policies to ensure that we grow. But he says he doesn't see Cyril righting the ship. He's actually rather weak, and yeah, probably won't be able to do much anyway, even if he tried.
Yeah, I've always felt that his view on the IMF stuff was a little bit hopeful because he believes that the IMF will actually be able to dictate terms and that we will follow them. And in truth, in every other country that's gone down a similar path to South Africa, and we know from the NDR exactly which path we're on, they take the IMF's money. They say, yes, we're going to comply. We're going to do exactly what you want us to do. Thank you so much. It's the same as Moody's. Let's use Moody's as the example. Moody's comes here. They probably get taken to some nice strip clubs. They certainly get taken out for very nice dinners. I know that for a fact. At our best restaurants, they get put up at our best hotels. They get treated like absolute royalty, and they get a lot of niceties when they're here, in the hopes that they won't downgrade us, and they won't because they want to come back in another 3, 4, 6 months, whatever it is, for more of the same, and they can sort of restrict for a while the downgrade, and I think similar things are happening. So the same game will happen with the IMF over and over again until eventually the IMF puts their foot down. And as they have in many other countries across the world, and when that eventually happens, it usually leads to the final sort of nail in the coffin.
Yeah, quite. So, I mean, I actually asked a friend of mine who does international markets. I said, well, what about IMF? But what about like the Chinese, right? What about those sort of countries coming out and we becoming a vassal state, essentially? And he said, the only vassal state the Chinese has or have at the moment is practically Venezuela. You practically need nothing else available to you before the Chinese will even take a look at you. With all our laws and regulations and especially the BE stuff and the affirmative action stuff, we're just not ready for the Chinese at all to come in and start taking control. I know they're sort of trying because I know people who have met with them, and the Chinese are very unhappy with these sort of regulations. They don't want to share, their wealth with anyone.
Yeah.
Let alone, black cronies in
South
Africa.
There was a big development in Joburg, in Modderfontein, where they bought acres and acres of land a little while back, intended to build a whole city, essentially, a miniature sort of city within a city, I suppose. And that all fell through. A lot of rumors about why that happened, but I think one of the reasons was probably related to the corruption that goes on and what you have to pay. I'm hearing that on your side of the line.
That's Ronaldo, you prick.
Thanks, Ronaldo. Welcome to the Superior live stream. So, the corruption and not being able to do what they want to do, which you've mentioned. Although I did tweet something interesting today from someone I've started following, who had a map of Africa and where China has mineral rights and oil rights. And South Africa obviously has given China access to both. And amongst other countries, Botswana being one of the ones that stands out as not having given any rights to China. And the sort of title, the caption was Wakanda Forever, which I quite enjoyed. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, kudos to China. It's a sort of economic colonialism, but at least it's based on capitalism in a way. So let's answer a few questions here. So Ronaldo asks, do we really want to answer ZACP questions here? Ronaldo, this is the Renegade report, not the ZACP. No, we haven't run out of money. And no, that's fake news. Why do you believe Ranjeni Munsami over us? I mean, really now.
In fair, okay, so I'll give you some pushback on this, and then we can you can push back and say whatever you want to say. I think Sarah, I understand what happened, and you correct me if I'm wrong. What happened is, and if you've been following Sarah Britton for any period of time on Twitter, you'll know that she's the type of person who spills her guts on Twitter. She doesn't hold back, and in terms of saying what's happening in her life, etc. And so essentially, as far as I could understand from the tweets, she had been in charge of the campaign where people were hired to walk around with signs and advertise the party. And then what had happened was she realized that this was really helping people, quite a lot of poor people, and it was sort of snowballing in some respects. And so more and more money got invested in it. And to some extent, she started investing herself and her own money in this project. And she's racked up a lot of debt doing that. I think she's silly to have done that personally. I do think, and as I said earlier today on a group, I think it's an unforced error on the party side. Not that she's the party, because she's not even one of the 10, but she is the wife of the party leader, and I think it's an unforced error when the wife of the party leader says, "Look, I've gone and got myself into a whole bunch of debt trying to do good stuff here, but I've gone and got myself into debt." The messaging is poor, and so. Yeah, I think there's that to it, but I also think people need to learn to be able to separate two different happenings.
Yeah, true. So Sarah had a budget to do the campaign and the posters. Let me just move this a bit closer. The campaign and the posters, and we gave her a budget. She used up the budget. It worked very well. And then the people that we hired to have our posters, to be held up at traffic lights, things like that, they sort of developed quite a big friendship with Sarah, in actual fact. So she's actually helping them through the campaign, but using her own money. So we exceeded our budget on the posters, but the party itself has not lost money and is certainly not bankrupt by any means. The budget went to where it was supposed to go. She's running our branding and things like that, and she decided to take that on for herself, for her own account, and she's doing actually a bloody well, a lot of good. I'll have you know.
Yeah, as I said, I think it's not ideal, and unfortunately, once it gets wrapped up into one ball, as people want to do in this case, it's not helpful, I think, to your message. I will say one thing that is quite helpful is 2 weeks ago you were funded by the Koch brothers, billionaires in the United States, and of course all other nefarious means. Koch brothers probably funded by the Russians as well, because anything we don't like is funded by the Russians. And now, so they all bought that as a theory, and now you're broke and bankrupt, and they're all buying that as a theory. So look, let's stick to one thing, guys. You wanna hit on the party. Try at least keep your conspiracy theories to a total of 1 on each issue.
Right, and don't forget useful enemies. Maybe that tweet wasn't an error. That's all I'm going to say. So anyway, the Burn asks, what are your thoughts on Malema's latest kill them tweet? Is it wrong if I say I don't give a shit what Malema tweets or says anymore?
Yeah, I mean, come on, isn't it obvious he's being careful? I mean, he's now clearly crafting stuff so that you all know what he means. You all know he wants to say kill them all, and he wants to refer to someone specific, or he wants to say a certain line, but he's not anymore, because he doesn't want to risk the chance of being taken to some sort of SAA HRC or something like that. So he's saying it where he can't get bust, and you know what he's saying anyway. This is the problem with these laws. They're you can circumvent them, you can get around them in these ways, and also they don't mean anything, and they're completely applied arbitrarily.
Right,
So,
and the left has marched through the institutions like the South African Human Rights Commission. So no, I don't really care what he says. The more he says, the better it is for us. To be honest, we know exactly where he stands. So let me just see here. Would you say that FF Plus has an image problem, and that is why they haven't capitalized on the DA's problems? Here's the thing with small parties in South Africa generally. Small parties are basically small businesses. So you put in 200,000 Rand as a deposit, like once off, like say 20 years ago. And for every seat that you get 1.3 million Rand back from Treasury. So what you find, especially within the UDM, I don't know much about Freedom Front Plus, but I think, there's some sort of family arrangement there. What you find is that all that money from Treasury is used, for constituency work. And the constituency, work is basically the family of the leader of the party doing constituency work. And the constituency work is like going to New York in December, because UDM has a huge, following in New York City, of course. So these parties are not there to move anything. They're not there to change policy or to implement, sort of set principles into the political diaspora. They're actually just there to retain their money that they receive for each seat in parliament. So that's why the UDM and ACDP and things like that don't actually grow or decrease. They sort of remain the same. They do just enough to make sure that the coalition votes for them. And then other than that, not much else.
Yeah, I can't disagree really with that. In terms of the FF Plus and image, I mean, the question is you need to consider who have the DA turned off, and why would those people be a natural fit for the FF Plus, and why weren't they before? I've been turned off the DA to a large extent. I will be voting for them provincially. I haven't decided who I'm going to be voting for nationally yet, even for you, Ramon.
What a fucking traitor. Jesus Christ.
So, but I've certainly been turned off the DA. They will not get my national vote, that is for sure. And I think a lot of people have as well. And the people who've been turned off are, as Ronaldo would say, centrists. If Ronaldo wasn't part of the DA, I don't think he'd be voting for them. They're centrists. They're people who are true liberals in the real sense of that word. And they're not interested in the identity politics. And the DA managed to not play those games for a very long time. And yeah, it's. I think those are the people who've been turned off. Now, are those people particularly turned on to the FF Plus? Well, the FF Plus has always played a little bit of identity politics. So if you were turned off the DA for that reason, would you be turned on to the FF Plus because they're a little bit more to the right? I'm not really so sure. I think if you're looking at economic reasons, you need to be looking at the IFP, you need to be looking at the ZACP, you need to be looking at those parties. If you're looking at social things, sure, perhaps the FF Plus is the place for you. Maybe the ACDP is the place for you if you're going more to the right. If you're looking for sort of constructive government, people who think they can do it right without the corruption, maybe COPE is down that avenue for you. I think there's a lot of options, and I don't think that the people who've left the DA, who are generally disgusted with the move to the left and generally unhappy with the move towards embracing identity politics, I don't think the FF Plus offers them what the DA is now missing.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, you must remember, 7 million people don't vote in this country when they could vote. These are registered voters who don't vote. So, if they are smaller parties, they get a lot of support. It could be because they provide, new ideas to people who generally would not vote. But, the FF Plus for me, I mean, I read the manifesto. It's pretty cool. It's not too bad. But yeah, it's not the party for me, because I don't. They're more like Afrikaners than, and I'm not an Afrikaner, so yeah, it just turns me off a little bit. So Christopher asks, what do you think the future of white people in SA is if EFF and BLF get into power? I don't think you should worry about BLF. I don't think they'll get into power. But even the ANC is a really racist party. I mean, if you, I mean, we've been living under a racist regime for the past 20, well, since what, 1948. Just the races have changed. No, I think whites will be the scapegoats. Minorities are always scapegoats for liberation movements and for authoritarian movements, especially. So I think it will get a bit more difficult in the future if the ANC continues with the sort of rhetoric that it has mustered up. And the EFF is just there to make the ANC look good, in my opinion. I'm sure they're working together to be, the EFF is a bit more radical. So EFF, you be radical, we will just say, whites are lackadaisical. You can say you can kill them. That's fine. We'll just say they're lackadaisical and they don't care about black people.
It's that point that the EFF is really just what the Youth League was to the ANC. The ANC always had the Youth League to be the controversial wing of the party. That's how it would work. The Youth League would come out one day and they'd go, we should kill all the white people. And then they wouldn't say exactly that, but something sort of controversial, equally controversial. And then the sort of next day or that afternoon, the ANC, through Gwede Mantashe, usually would clarify and go, no, of course we don't want to kill the white people. We just want them to take responsibility for their role in inequality or something like that. And so it's a very clever way of shifting the Overton window. And that's what they've always been. In terms of will it become more difficult for white people? I think we need to be careful here of being too conspiratorial and feeling wanting to embrace victimhood. I think you've got reasons to be, if you're a white person, to be all upset with life. You might be upset by certain requirements that mean you can't get a specific job. You might be upset by crime, although that seems to affect all races. So that seems a silly thing to get upset based on your race about. But I think it all depends on whether the government partakes in that oppression directly. So what's happened to white people, for example, let's use Afrikaners as an example. They are white, but they're also Afrikaans, and so it's a specific group. And we know that since basically the turn of the century, 2000 and onwards, we know that they've done very, very well for themselves. In fact, arguably better than they did in the 20 years before that, some of which included apartheid. So the thing is they haven't been able to necessarily get jobs, for example, in government or big corporate. So they've gone off and they've made it their own way in the world. And I think that as long as the government isn't involved in those areas, people find a way, and sort of capital finds a way, doesn't it? So that I don't think is too much of a concern. When you have someone like Julius, or if the ANC is allowed to continue with their plans to remove all the guns from the society, I mean, that is done for a reason. You remove the guns first so that you can then perpetrate violence using the government. And the community can't fight back, the populace can't fight back. If that follows, then we all have a lot to be worried about. But there's not many white people before they run out of white people and it becomes just a different tribe that gets attacked, frankly.
Yeah, no, I can't disagree with that. And I mean, we put it in whites, but I use minorities generally. Like, I think the colored people have been really fucked over.
Oh, absolutely.
Before, during the Nats, and now during the course of the ANC. I think they're the ones that have been really, truly, truly fucked over. They never had economic power or political power, and now they still don't have either, to be honest.
And I think we need to be honest about even the majority. The majority of black people have not been well served by the policies of the ANC government. A minority of that majority have been well served. A lot of people in this country have not been, and are still, a lot worse off than they could be, just as every other race group really is. And in fact, the statistics show that black people are far worse off.
Right, but here's interesting. So back to R.W. Johnson just for a second. So the ANC have actually decided to, well, it's been a long time, they wanted to create a political bourgeoisie. a black political bourgeoisie. So what they've done is they wanted to create rich black people, and so they used all the, machinations of the state to do that through BE laws, through the mining charter, through procurement laws and things like that for the SOEs, and also, to flood the SOEs with cronies, essentially. And so this sort of black bourgeoisie would actually determine the future of South Africa, because the middle class actually determines futures of societies, not necessarily the poor or the very rich. It's the middle class that do that. However, interestingly, that project where everything is done for the black middle class has directly impacted jobs for the poor. So, for example, the mining charter, the state expropriates 30% of your investment once off, just like that. It has created such turmoil in the mining sector that there's been hundreds of thousands of miners who lost their jobs over the past 20 years or so, due to regulation and policy by the ANC. So they will do anything to maintain this political black bourgeoisie to the detriment of everyone else. And everyone else, unfortunately, majority are poor black people, who then they give grants and shitty education to, of course. So, so when I think it is important to say whites are not, are not the enemy, but they're not being picked upon. They're being picked upon in rhetoric, but in real circumstances, the black, poor, and other minority groups are in a far worse position than whites generally. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, look, if we're going to follow the socialism roots, let's be honest, the people that are going to take the biggest knock are going to be the middle class. The middle class are a fair mix at the moment of white and black, greater in absolute numbers in black people, but yeah. So I think it will be a mix, and those we're all going to suffer. Put it that way. The reality is that a lot of people have gotten on with things in this country, and people do live their lives, and your neighbors and people you drive to work with in the morning or next to on the roads. They're of all different creeds and cultures, and when the power goes off from Eskom, they feel it just as much as you. And when eventually the sewage stations shut down, as they are in the process of doing, they will be in just as much trouble. They'll be suffering with the typhoid just like you will.
Absolutely. And we made this point before that the poor are actually much more democratically, engaged through service delivery strikes and things like that. The middle class don't really do much except stop Zuma once every 5 years.
Or they give up even.
Right.
Those 7 million who don't vote. I wonder how many of those are probably earning a salary and paying tax.
Yeah, true. So there is a plane flying around. I hope no one can hear it. What is your view on the EFF MP bad-mouthing his own party leadership? Is the EFF coming apart at the seams? Now, I looked into the story. It seems there's two conflicting views. I have no doubt that the EFF are cronies and crooks, don't get me wrong, and looters. There's no doubt in my mind about that. Julius has been doing it for years and years and years. So why would he stop now? But this particular EFF MP is not on the party list anymore, and has been purged from most of the EFF positions in essence. So what I think it really is sort of bad karma, and now he's just trying to make a noise and try and be relevant. But what he says is probably true, but I don't think it will manifest in any real way within the EFF at all. They're actually very good at sort of alienating these sort of people, and ensuring that they answer the allegations in quite a good way. I saw in Lawsy last night on ENTA, I believe, and the man's very good. The allegations he says are untrue, audited accounts for all political parties at Parliament. It's a public record. Anyone can go see it. Like, he swiftly dismantled an entire thing, except proving that, or not proving that they stole from VBS, which I think is true.
I think there's a certain size you get to where scandal, so to speak, doesn't actually affect you that much. You can sort of ride it out. We've seen this with all political parties. The ANC is the best example. They've written out so many scandals. It shouldn't be plausible, but they have. The DA has written out scandals. Whether they were or weren't is irrelevant. They were reported as such. They were seen as such by enough people. Things like Helen Zille's tweets, colonialism tweets, and the Patricia de Lille debacle. The EFF has written out some scandals as well. They had Julius and his fund, the Rantanang Trust, I think it was. That was basically, as far as I understand it, funneling of money through tenders to pay for nice things for Julius and his family and his cronies. The allegations are probably true, or they probably have some truth to them. I think they do come out as part of sort of sour apples from someone who's been chucked from the party. But they're not going to have any real effect. The size of that party is big enough. They're going to weather the storm. They're going to turn around and go, it's just a bitter person. Their supporters will believe that, because at the end of the day, the average EFF supporter is not the smartest tool in the shed. And so things will go on. You and I might not agree, and you and I might go, yeah, looks like they've committed tax fraud, for example. But let's be honest, it's not going to change our opinion. We thought they were bad before. We just think they're a little bit worse now.
Yep, can't complain about that. So, the Burn asked, should we get Big Daddy Liberty on our team? Well, he sort of is in a way. We do speak to him quite a bit. As for the ZACP, we did offer him a place, but he wanted to focus on what he's doing now. So Johan asked, what are the chances of Ace Magashule being purged from the ANC and later prosecuted? I think 0 to fuck all, in my humble opinion. Ace Magashule holds probably the most powerful position in the ANC, which is Secretary General. So he's basically the CEO of the ANC. The president is sort of the chairman of the board, but the CEO runs the place. And Ace is extremely conniving, extremely evil, and he controlled the ANC back to front, and he's undermining Ramaphosa at every turn. So I don't think he'll be purged at all. These are just another set of allegations against the ANC. They've never taken action before. I don't see them taking action now, only because if he was like some lowly whatever MEC for education somewhere, yeah, maybe. But as a Secretary General, no, practically untouchable in my opinion.
Yeah, the evolution of the ANC is going to be very interesting. I think that's quite hard to predict. There's a lot of, as everyone knows, there's a lot of belief and rumor around Didi Mabuza and whether Cyril will be recalled and Didi Mabuza will become the president. If Ace Magashule is basically running a covert op for Zuma, which to some extent does seem to be the case, I'd be wary of this belief that anyone is holding a candle for Zuma himself. So they may be pretending to do so for his support, but Ace Magashule doesn't want to be Jacob Zuma's deputy president.
No.
If Ace Magashule is trying for power, he wants total and complete power.
Right. Sorry, just interrupt. Let's not forget that the EWC decision at the NEC conference and the nationalization of the Reserve Bank were two key things Zuma had to get through to undermine Cyril Ramaphosa. And Ace deeply believes in those two policies rather. So they made sure that even if Ramaphosa was president, which he did become, he'll be hamstrung by these two policies taken by the ANC, generally speaking. So, yeah, no, I don't think AC is going anywhere.
Is there anything else? I see Caracol mocking my background. Well, screw you, because...
What background?
Exactly. But I've also tried to do this in places with better backgrounds, and unfortunately, my internet is strongest here, so this is where we're stuck for the moment. So stop being such an internet privilege snob. Yeah, exactly.
Would you say that Paul Kagame is a role model or a cautionary tale? I think Paul Kagame is a power-hungry dictator that sort of understands that he can, latch onto power and loot if the economy grows, to be honest. I think he does kill journalists, and he does kill political opponents as well. So he's really not a role model at all.
Sorry, I was waiting to see where the downside was there.
Oh, killing journalists. That's very rude. Only news to
Very rude,
report.
very rude.
The only,
That's what will be reported now.
right, stop attacking
Yeah.
democracy, Jonathan
Yeah.
Witt. These people are fighting. These people are the firefighters of democracy, and you are just undermining them.
Did you see them? Sorry, you're on Paul Kagame. Yeah, I mean, he's a dictator. We dictators are never ideal. Sometimes, if they're benevolent, they're better than otherwise. It's not an ideal situation. There is an argument to be made that that's maybe how African states needs to go. If you the problem is you can't pick your dictator, right? So you don't know if you're getting the benevolent dictator, a la Singapore, or if you're getting the brutal dictator like Cambodia.
Or Emmanuel Macron.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, okay, fair enough. I mean, Emmanuel Macron, what is his approval rating now? 6%.
Right, but all he does is shoot people in the face with rubber bullets because they're in the yellow vest. I mean, we can laugh, but I think it's a real scandal and a human rights.
Well, there's scandal happening everywhere. There's that happening in. So Emmanuel Macron is basically ignoring the will of his people, and pretending like it's a small uprising. I mean, these people have been going for what, half a year now, every single weekend, and they're kind of not giving up. You would think they would if they were such a small group and you'd be able to placate them, but. I don't think that's the case. I think they do represent a large population in France who are pissed off. But you've got Theresa May, not even based, openly siding with the EU and pretending like she's not. She's like a bad James Bond villain. She's making as if I really want a Brexit, and then everything she does is against Brexit. It's hilarious and tragic. So you've got that happening, in the UK. You've got in Canada. Justin Trudeau should resign. He was caught being blatantly corrupt. I don't think he survives another election, but at the moment he seems to be just pretending like nothing's happening. All these problems. And then an interesting thing I read, I think you shared it, about Salvini in Italy. Just sounds like quite an interesting guy, quite brilliant in his management of people.
Right. I mean, for those who don't know, Salvini is the deputy prime minister of Italy.
And I think he's the Homeland Security or in foreign affairs or one of those. The guy who controls the borders in Italy,
right.
He's that guy as well as deputy prime minister.
And he's exceedingly popular because based on the article that I shared with you, he had a live stream. He has a weekly live stream that people, thousands of people log on to.
Mm-hmm.
And people are moaning about immigration and, saying we need more people to come in. And he says, fine, your prize is 10 immigrants. They can go to your house. Just send me your details. I'll send them off to you as soon as possible. And he's becoming very, very popular because he sort of plays the internet game. He's a sort of half internet troll, half populist, and it's working wonders for him. So in terms of populism, he's probably the most popular sort that we've seen. So chances of EFF destroying itself from the inside out, I think slim to none at this stage, unless they stop growing. As long as they continue to grow, Julius has them by the scruff of the necks, and they will carry on.
That's correct.
No one will try to take him out while they're growing and while they have a lot of influence as they do now.
Yeah, and I think there's a long game being played. It's obvious to everyone now. That is what we predicted on the show quite a while back. It's something I've been saying since basically since Julius left the ANC. The only thing I've ever bought that he said that was 100% true is that he will, he loves the ANC and he will live the ANC and die ANC, essentially. And I believe that he is that, and the EFF is his vehicle back. And when he, what we have to hope is that you have enough coalitions on the right side of things to take power. So let's say the ANC slips below the 50, and between the other coalitions, not including the EFF or even with the EFF, that's what forms the new government. So it excludes the ANC. That's an ideal scenario from where we currently stand. But if the ANC drops below 50 and the EFF walks in and goes, "We'll give you whatever you want," but Julius is the new Secretary General, and Floyd Shivambu is number 5 on your list. And Mbuyiseni Ndlozi is, I don't know, in the top 10, or he's a premier of a province or something. That is where the huge danger comes in, and that's really what Julius has always wanted, a path back into the ANC and a path to the presidency. So no, I don't think the EFF is going to tear itself apart. I think they're very aware of their power and the potential that they hold, especially as the ANC loses power, and over time, that's what you need to watch.
Indeed. So Cyril lasting his full term after the general election. I actually have my doubts about this. There's a variety of scenarios we can play out. I think perhaps Mabuza and Julius have a deal. They can kick him out after the next conference. Mabuza as president, Julius as deputy, or they pick a third candidate, like Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, to do their bidding. And then Mabuza becomes Secretary General, and I don't know, Julius becomes Minister of Finance or something, God forbid. I don't know how long. I don't know how long Cyril will last. It'll depend entirely on what he does after the election. If the NPA and SARS finds a lot of teeth, so far it looks good. The new SARS commissioners from the private sector is quite well known, quite highly regarded. The NPA, I forgot her name. Nothing much has happened, but she's put in Willy Hofmeyr in the Special Investigations Unit and the Commercial Crime Court.
Yeah, that may take time.
Again. So those sort of things look promising for Cyril, but I have yet to see Cyril have that political will to actually do something. So maybe the first 3 months of the election, we'll need to see what happens there, and that may determine our future in the short to medium term.
Yeah, I have no disagreement on what you've said there. I think, look, I think once again, it's hard to predict this, as I said about all the ANC guys chopping and changing and vying for power. It's difficult to say. I do think we need to be careful of seeing Cyril as a victim or seeing Cyril as sort of being outflanked. This is a man who's been involved in the ANC for a very long time. If he wanted to, he probably could have been president instead of Thabo Mbeki. He chose not to be. He went and basically had billions of rands handed to him in the private sector. He set up the very laws that made him a very wealthy man. If you want to talk about gaming the game, Cyril Ramaphosa is your man. And so I don't buy this, guy who was just minding his own business in the private sector and then saw that things needed to be fixed and came back to the ANC. And, now he's like trying to work within the power struggle and he doesn't really know what's happening. And Ace is coming to get him and Didi Mabuza is coming to get him. I think that these guys all are smart politicians in their own rights. But don't discount Cyril, and Cyril also having his own plans. And who wins, I'm not sure. But just he's not a victim, and he's not stupid.
Right, and he's not entirely innocent either. He's just a bit of two evils. He's just a bit of two evils, essentially. Opinion on Afrikaner self-determination. Completely support self-determination of any kind. And we've said this numerous times on this podcast. Like, we're big fans of Hart for Capetonian, which is basically coloured self-determination as well. And
they go a bit crazy sometimes. Let's just
a little bit, but I mean that's what makes them fun. But I know I sound like a real fucking South African. But anyone,
you are.
I am in a way, but everyone should be able to self-determine. That's why we like direct democracy and nullification. So if a federal law doesn't suit the context of your town or your city or your province or your society, it shouldn't apply to you. And you should be able to say, no, thanks, we won't apply this to ourselves. So, I mean, anything else to add to that, Jonathan?
Nope, not from my side.
So, question for you, Jonathan. Ever considered getting involved with politics as well?
No, not right now. I quite like being relatively neutral. I think if you've listened to the podcast for long enough, you know that I have been, and in fact, I've probably been harder on the DA than any other party because up until recently, I was pretty much a DA voter. So I did hold them to account as far as I was concerned. I'm busy with other stuff. As you all know, I'm still very much busy with medicine and all that I do there. Takes up most of my time. Not interested in politics for the time being, and we'll see where that goes. I also, I think when you go into politics, you have to be convinced that you're going to make some sort of impact. So you look at Ramon, for example, assuming they win a couple of seats, I think they will make the impact because they've said how they're going to do that. They're going to go to certain committees and they're going to hold those committees to account. They're going to ask uncomfortable parliamentary questions. They're going to spread the ideas of liberty through Parliament. And I think that may very well have good impact. So that's valuable. My impact, well, perhaps I could just be a straightforward politician, but I think my impact would be best served in health because that's what I know most about. And at the moment, there's no real avenue for that. One day if there were, perhaps I'd be a bit more interested. But to just go into politics and, talk about random stuff I don't know about might be a bit of a wasted journey.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Fair enough. So this is a bit unrelated to the other questions around politics, but thoughts on assisted dying or euthanasia, as we call it. I'm in favor. I think it should be fairly narrowly defined and maybe taken by a person who's corpus mentis. But I don't have any strong opposition to euthanasia. I think ultimate freedom means that you should be able to end your life when you want to.
Well, so this is complex for me. So firstly, physician-assisted dying, let's not say suicide, but dying, kind of already exists. It's not spoken about for very obvious reasons because it's essentially illegal, but it's not unheard of for physicians to make patients comfortable in their death, and in so doing, make that death happen probably sooner than it would otherwise. So if I give you an example, if someone comes in with 95% burns, third-degree burns, their chance of survival is zero. We know that. They will not survive, even in the best burn centers in the world. Those people are usually left with a breathing tube in, which is connected to some oxygen, because there's nothing stopping them from breathing, so they carry on breathing. And they're given relatively high doses of sedatives and opioids, specifically, and usually in the South African context, morphine. If they weren't, they would probably take longer to die. Now, so that's a form of assisted dying. We do similar things where cancer patients are involved. Cancer patients in ICU get very high doses of morphine for good reason. They're in pain. But there is an argument. I don't want to incriminate anyone here, but the truth is that if you weren't to give them a lot of these drugs, the dying would probably take a lot longer. So doctors are not unaware of suffering, and I think that to an extent this already does take place. On euthanasia itself, so there's a few things. One of the problems we have is that you cannot get hold of drugs very easily as a member of the public because everything is very regulated. So that creates a need for you to have a professional to kill you. I have a problem with you needing a professional to kill you. So if you want to kill yourself, if you want to engage in the act, then perhaps we should do that. And perhaps it should be relatively easy to walk into a pharmacy and buy the tablet to do that, or the drip to do that. But in terms of getting doctors to do it, I'm not nuts about the idea just because I feel that it directly violates the Hippocratic Oath. There's obviously debate around that because you are meant to relieve suffering, but you're also not meant to end life. It's a very complex and controversial topic for me, and I could probably talk on it for another hour. But those are my initial thoughts.
Yeah, if you want to sleep, get Jonathan started on health stuff. You should actually release like 3 hour Joe Rogan style podcast, but just about
On
health.
health. I
So
see
health.
North South wants me on the podcast. I have promised I'd go on there. I promise, guys, I'm coming.
No, go. I mean, I've been, and many others have been as well. You should go. It's a
No,
good podcast.
absolutely. Yeah, just
Subscribe to North South podcast, everyone. Well
yeah, they're
worth your
doing good
time.
stuff.
Absolutely. So there was another one. Yeah, we're going to expand Renegade Media and how? Yes, Martin. Yes, Jonathan can vouch for himself. He's on call what twice a week at least now.
On average, yeah, on average twice a week. So and then work every other day. So
right.
Um,
And
here's the thing.
I'm busy running 3 different things: the podcast, my business, and the political party. So, and the podcast, I'm afraid, has dropped in quality a little bit, and I understand that, and I apologize.
Okay,
for that.
so let's clear this up. All right. So in terms of the podcast, there's a studio that is built, but it wasn't correctly set up. That process of getting it correctly set up, which includes some new equipment, it includes a bit of signage that needs to be done. It includes some proper soundproofing because it shares a wall with an office, literally where you can hear the phone ring if the phone rings. That needs to happen, and as with everything, it's just taken a lot longer than expected. We've got friends, including Cyril, helping us with that, but it's just taking some time. So that's one thing to point out. The other thing is well, there's 2 other things. One is money, and the other is time. So Ramon and I are both very busy. Ramon with all his ventures. On top of medicine, I'm also involved in a very large charity organization, which I'm trying to work out and run, essentially. So we're both quite busy, and we really want to do major stuff with the platform. So the plan is to expand podcasts. The plan is to expand video, and the plan is also to create a sort of news platform, essentially, both opinion and general news.
Right, and live talking events or panel debates.
Yeah, so there's all of these things have been set up, and we know what we want to do. 2 things that you need to do that. One is money. The other is people. The reality is that
and to have people, you need money. So essentially, we need money.
Yeah. So there are a lot of these things happening, but some of them happen a bit slower. So if Ramon and I say we want to do a live event in 3 months' time, usually it happens in 6 months' time because shit happens, life happens, and we're trying to do this on the back end. The reality is that Ramon and I have not taken a cent for the podcast at all in the 3 years. We have earned, I think we've still got some money coming in from different sources, and we've actually just got merch that's come in, so we'll make a little bit of cash off that. But none of that has been spent on us. We haven't taken a single cent. So we do this as best as we can when we can. The minute we can accelerate this, like any business, the minute we can accelerate it, we will. And there is stuff coming, but it's just taking us time, and we apologize.
Right. So, I mean, if you really want to help us expand this, what we need essentially is if everyone can just donate like 50 Rand a month. I don't know how many listeners we got, which is in the tens of thousands. So if everyone donates 50 Rand, we can get very far with that money. But also, Jonathan, yes, the merch indeed has arrived. Look at that beauty.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's amazing. It's
endorsed.
You know what else? It's endorsed by the Jews.
Endorsed by the. You know what else is amazing? Check out that label.
Yeah, proper Renegade report.
That label.
Genuine.
And there's a tag down here. Also Renegade report. So, and this is a very specific sports cotton. So it's stretchy and excuse me. So
Ramon, the question everyone wants to know is, can you CrossFit in that shirt?
Absolutely. So I got the people to make my CrossFit shirts do the merch for us. So I've had my CrossFit shirts for, I've got about 6. I've had them for a few, how long now? Almost a year. They get washed about 4 times a week because I do CrossFit often. They don't shrink. They don't fade. They are the best shirts I ever received, and that's why we asked these people to make it for us. Quality takes time, and quality is a little bit more expensive than your Mr. Price or your Fruit Loom shirts or whatever. So these are available on the website right now.
Are other designs coming soon?
They are already. They are ready. I just don't have them in my hands. But on the website, there's 3 designs to choose from. And yeah, take your pick. So they're limited to 30 per shirt for the moment, in different sizes. So,
And we do have some other designs as well that we'd like to develop. As you can all imagine, it's not exactly cheap to print essentially 100 t-shirts. We're doing a proof of concept here, and if you like them, please buy them, and then we'll make more of the same and more of other designs. There's a pretty cool helicopter communism design, which we'd like to do as well. So if for all you Chavez, not Chavez, there's a Freudian slip.
Pinochet.
Pinochet,
the other dictator.
The other dictator, all you Pinochet fans. Someone got upset with us for being Pinochet fans recently.
But I'm not a Pinochet fan.
Exactly. It's a meme, guys. Calm down. So yeah, what else are they asking in the question?
Right. Are core generalized questions. Are all politics reactionary? So if so, do you see your position shifting more to totalitarian right ideals in response to the growing regressive left? Listen, I've sort of flirted with various. I think my principles remain the same. I've always been like a sort of anarchist libertarian, based on the individual rights. So when the alt-right came out, I looked at them. I thought this could be sort of interesting, an alternative conservative movement that's a bit more focused on narrative, that's focused on memes and things like that. And then, unfortunately, they started speaking, and I just saw they were like white supremacists in suits. Like these people aren't splitting the atom anyway. Like they're really not bright in the slightest. So I thought, okay, fine, it's just the far right under a different garb, essentially. So I think the more polarized the world has become, the more libertarian centrist I've remained, essentially. So yeah, that's my answer to your question. Jonathan, what about you? Have you turned into a SJW overnight?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think we are all a bit reactionary in our politics. I think that's the nature of it now. Certainly if you're engaged in it on a daily basis, and especially if you're involved in social media. Twitter essentially is a reactionary platform. It's designed to be that. So I don't think you can avoid that in some respects. That said, I haven't changed on much. I've changed on things where I feel, I feel I was wrong. I started the podcast and I was anti-drug decriminalization. I've had my mind changed on that. I think decriminalization of drugs should happen. Legalization, I think there's a bigger debate to be had. But yeah, I don't see myself moving. I also think that it's that thing we always say, which is that the left is moving so far left that they're not pushing the right further right. They're opening the space for the right. So what's happening is if you view it as a rugby field, before it was 50-50 for argument's sake, left and right, and now the left has gone so far left that when you get to sort of the 22-yard line, it's kind of that's where the left starts. That's where the right begins, because now if you have any opinions that don't agree with high taxes, that don't agree with stopping industry to get rid of climate change, if you don't agree with the things Bernie Sanders says, if you don't agree with the things the ANC says, if you don't buy into your privilege, if you don't do all of these things, then you're not on the left, you're on the right. So welcome. I don't think people are being pushed further to the right. I just think the space for the right has expanded massively.
Right. So, but Gold Ninja. Sorry, but wants to define alt-right. It's basically storm fags. So it's people.
That's going to get you hate from on.
I'm used to it. So a storm fag is basically someone who has no identity whatsoever. So takes his race or her race as an identity, and sort of coalesces around identitarians on the right of the political spectrum in essence. So it's premised on. It's weird. Like I heard Richard Spencer, who's the father of the alt-right, speak, and he's not really like sort of racist. He's sort of like a separatist rather than like kick out everyone who's not white. He's more like let them like live, but like down there, far away from me, because they got like a different culture and they whatever savage.
I think,
But it's not about like genocide or gulags or something like that.
yeah, perhaps there's a non-violent element to it. It's still based in bigotry. It's based in hatred. I hate this thing now where we're going, well, do we really know what the alt-right is? It's not fair to say things are alt-right. Look, guys, when they call us alt-right on this podcast, that is laughable because I'm a Jew, Ramon's a French Arab. We're both liberals. We both believe in like freedom. We don't believe that one race is superior to another race in any way whatsoever. And that is opposite to everything the alt-right stands for. The alt-right is Richard Spencer. He coined the term. He does not like black people. He thinks their IQ is inferior on whole. He thinks that all races should live separately because they're fundamentally different and individuals don't matter to him. Collectives do. They don't like Jews. They don't like the Arabs. They don't like Muslims. They don't
Sorry,
like...
John, you're breaking up quite a bit there.
Oh, apologies.
Okay.
Any better?
Yeah, that's a lot better.
Look. The truth is that the alt-right are what you said earlier, which is kind of like the far right, not so violent. I would agree with that. But they definitely have bigoted views on things. And let's stop pretending like we don't know what the definition is. If you don't like other people based on a collective that is usually race-based and sometimes religion-based, then you are probably from the alt-right. And that's where you're at. We're not.
Yeah, and if you want to know more, like just look up Richard Spencer and people like that.
Yeah, you can see him. You can see his views and what he says and what he talks. And I think it's disingenuous to say that the guy who coined the term, the guy who led the alt-right for a very long period of time until it sort of came crashing down around him, isn't what the alt-right is. That is what the alt-right is, and let's stop pretending like it's something else.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. And do you think there's an alt-right in South Africa, Jonathan? This is my question. I think there's like some sort of attempts at it, but it doesn't seem to be working very well.
I mean, this is the thing. People are pointing to the whole label issue, right? Is it if someone so the left have done this to some extent as well, because everything gets, for example, labeled as racist. So what is racist now? So it's the same, I suppose, to an extent with alt-right. If everything that kind of, you don't agree with is a bit to the right of you is alt-right, then does alt-right really mean anything? To me, alt-right is if you're racist, if you're anti-Semitic, if you put those things together, if you're particularly ethno-nationalist based on those things, you're alt-right. Go look at what Richard Spencer says. Go look at the people who support him. There's enough people online writing a whole bunch of stuff. What's that guy's name? Got a lot to say about Jordan Peterson.
Vox Day.
Vox Day. Vox Day says he's alt-right. Go read his stuff. It's open and clear what he thinks. He's written books about what he thinks. There's tons on his webpage. It's very obvious what the alt-right is, guys. Let's stop pretending and let's move on, because I don't think there's any value in that side of the idea spectrum.
Yeah, I think it's just a question of collectivists versus individualists, and we are obviously on the individualist side. So if you call them alt-right or whatever else, it doesn't matter too much. And no, residents of Oranje are not alt-right by any means. Well, not that I know of. I don't know them personally.
Look, not every racist is alt-right either. Julius Malema's a racist. He's not alt-right. Being racist is not the defining characteristic. It's one of the potential characteristics. So no, you can't just label everyone alt-right. I would agree with that, but let's not try to avoid the label when it does stick.
And I think that's fair enough, but it's not necessarily use the label to dismiss someone or out of hand. I mean,
Yeah,
because like Stefan Molyneux, right? When I was younger, I used to listen to him because he had these great monologues on anarchism and what law would look like when it was
mm,
privatized and things like that. And it was like such brilliant stuff. It was really sort of groundbreaking anarchism at the time. And then he went into all sorts of debates about women choosing ourselves to sleep with and having children out of wedlock is morally wrong. And now he's onto the IQ stuff. And I read his tweets and I cringe like all hell. And I
yeah.
sometimes think about myself in my youth thinking this guy was like such a great intellect. And now I look at him and he's like a bit pathetic.
I think that's a danger of social media. You can fall down a hole. It's like, kind of like a dopamine hole, where you start saying more and more ridiculous things, and you get a response. And the more extreme it is, the bigger response you get, because the people who are extreme, who agree with you, will give you kudos, and the people who aren't will fight with you all day long and call you names, and that's empowering regardless, because you have power over them because you're occupying space in their heads essentially, and they do this. It happens more and more. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is an example of the same thing on the other side. She is very she's very good at coming up with stupid ideas and stupid comments on Twitter, and sort of clapping back at things, and she follows the exact same methodology. And I think it's just exactly as I say, the sort of dopamine hole. You fall down, and it becomes sort of this self-perpetuating cycle, and you keep doing more and more crazy and extreme things and saying more and more crazy and extreme things.
Yeah. All right. So it does appear we're having issues with the checkout on our website. So just give me 24 hours, not even, to check that out. I'll get our developer tomorrow onto it. And I mean, don't get me wrong, Stefan Molyneux is a bright guy, and I'll probably lose every single debate I have with him because he is that sort of intellectual. But yeah, to me, he's gone off the deep end. So, watch him and read his work and do all that with pleasure. But
Yeah.
for me, it's yeah, he's gone a little bit too much. So, right. So it seems like we are sort of out of questions. We got about what 5 minutes left. If you got any more to add, please do so right now. So,
Did you see? I just wanted to chat quickly. Let's talk
hmm,
US a bit. I don't know if you saw the media lose their minds over Trump retweeting that meme of Biden feeling up Biden.
it was wonderful, and I think you retweeted Michael Malice's take on this, and that was
Yes, I
superb.
did, because it was excellent.
Right.
Have
And
you have you got it there?
no, I don't. I don't. But basically, so the headlines were the president retweets doctored video, and I can't remember what he said about that. Basically, they sort of creating a category for
So
for a tweet to make it seem like it's done with malice. I can't
yeah,
actually remember
so
too
he
much.
said one of the reasons to refer to Carpeg Dongtum's Biden videos as doctored is to pave the way for banning such images as fraudulent misinformation on social media, as the EU has taken steps to do. The cathedral saw what tools work against it, and it is taking steps accordingly. And he's 100% right. They're going to demonize this, and then once they've demonized it, people will go, well, now that it's demonized, we should probably get rid of it, and that will justify that. If you want to listen to a good conversation, which sort of pulls this type of thing apart, Gareth Cliff this morning on his morning show, I think in the first hour, no, I lie, in the second hour, he had a woman on from, I think, from a film and publications board. I'm not 100% sure, but that was what was referenced at the end. There's a video game, or a plug-in to a video game, which essentially the point is to go around raping women and drowning babies, or something equally vulgar. And of course, the authorities have stepped in and banned the game in South Africa, which is just stupid. But Gareth pulled it apart quite well. And if you want to listen to a good argument with someone advocating for banning, it was quite good.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. So election predictions, we've done this before, but I suspect ANC 56, EFF between 10 and 12,
Yeah,
DA between 20 and 23, and then the rest will fill up all those gaps. Thoughts on Andrew Yang? I don't know. Did you hear him with Ben Shapiro, Jonathan?
It's in my queue. It's in my queue. I've been turned off UBI, and that's his big thing. UBI is his major area.
What is interesting about him, though, he's actually very smart. He's got all the data on. His argument actually sort of makes sense when he's saying it. It sounds like some pie in the sky bullshit. And I thought Ben gave him quite a good run for his money, and he answered it in a way that was polite, articulate. As if he really thought about his answers. I think he's like pessimism is wrong. I think greater destruction will create new jobs that we're not aware of, and some jobs will be lost, but not to the degree that we think. So I'm not a techno pessimist. I'm actually a very progressive kind of guy with in terms of technology. But he's the only Democrat who's not an identitarian. He's actually looking for solutions to real problems.
Exactly the point.
And that I respect a lot.
Yeah, he's probably the only guy in the field. I would have, until a short while ago, said Pete Buttigieg was also part of this group who had not embraced identity politics. It didn't matter who they were, and they didn't focus on who you are as a voter, your race, your gender, etc. They just wanted to govern the country in a certain way, make certain rules and laws because they felt that they would help the general population. Typical politicians, for good or bad. Andrew Yang unfortunately, Pete Buttigieg over the last week has ventured down that way after he got annihilated. See, what happens is they annihilate you for not embracing identity politics. And then if you don't, then usually people back down and embrace them. So what happened with Pete was that he's a gay guy who's married to another gay guy. And apparently they've never been affectionate or something in public. And the SJWs got hold of this and basically said that he wasn't gay enough, essentially. Because if you're gay, then you have to basically be hanging off the top of a bus in the desert with a 300-meter pink train behind you.
Right, you basically have to be the Gimp from Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, something like that. You've got to be a stereotype of a gay person. You can't just be like a person who happens to be gay, and that's what Pete seems to be, just a guy who happens to be gay. So who cares what he does in his house and in his bedroom? Anyway, he got lambasted on that, and since then he's made some stupid comments about Trump and MS-13, basically defending MS-13. The Democrats keep falling into this hole. He's also embraced some of the identity politics around, I can't remember, I think it was Beto O'Rourke who was doing the Israel stuff at the moment, but he's fallen down the hole. Andrew Yang has not fallen down the hole yet, and I really do appreciate that. I think that if he can win a couple of primaries, he's a threat. But I don't think he has the funding, and I don't think he has the impetus. The Democratic Party is completely run by the far left currently. They're going to be run by the far left for this campaign, and whether you like Donald Trump or not, you better damn well hope they lose. Because if they lose, they get knocked back down, and chances are the moderates in the Democratic Party rise to power again. If they win, you will see Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez as the head of the Congress. You're going to see some radicals as the head of the Senate when they take over that. And you're going to look at whoever falls into that White House being basically run by the far left.
Right. And to illustrate this point, the attacks on Joe Biden, creepy Joe Biden.
Yeah.
I mean, the right wing has been on this for for a few years now,
years
and years and years. But now he's actually being attacked by the far left in his own party. They're the ones that are spreading the videos of him being a bit
to destroy his campaign, because he's one of the strongest contenders.
Right, and he's more of a centrist than the rest of the field. Doesn't believe in reparations and doesn't believe in open borders and shit like that. So yeah, the left is fracturing in and of themselves, and so far all this is very good news for Donald Trump. If he decides to run again, I still don't see anyone beating him except perhaps for Joe Biden, and Joe Biden has got off to a really, really rocky start.
Yeah, look, Joe Biden's still polling at 30, and I saw another poll the other day that showed that 50% of Republicans don't care about him being a touchy-feely guy, and 62% of Democrats don't care about him being a touchy-feely guy. I think he can probably ride through this. The issue is in the age of memes, do you survive a presidential race when everything that you ever do now is going to be about your hands and your face and where you stick them? And I'm not sure he survives that. And remember, it's not memes are millennial, but they're boomer as well. Everyone's into the memes, and it'll be interesting to see. Where it goes. Just on a comment in the comment section there. Yes, Caracal, I know that Donald Trump called MS-13 animals. I think that's an insult to animals.
Huh. Yeah, no, that's true. And Joe Biden has to really sort of survive Donald Trump's linguistic kill shots. We put that video up on Renegade Report a few days ago, and Trump is just in describing.
Trump is a stand-up comedian. He is the funniest comedian we've had in years.
No, but he went in for a hug with someone, and then it didn't turn out well. And it says, "Oh, I felt like Joe Biden," and it was absolutely hilarious. Trump is, in that way, he's absolutely brilliant. And I don't see anyone in the Dems being able to counter that.
If you want to be truly entertained, if you're bored one night and you're not sure what to watch on like YouTube, just go and watch the latest Trump rally, where he's like off script and he's in a stadium somewhere with like 10,000 people in Michigan screaming, and he's hilarious. He's absolutely hilarious, and I think a lot of that has been lost in the his Hitler stuff and Jim Acosta perpetually trying to be the victim. Donald Trump is freaking hilarious. And yes, he says a whole bunch of bullshit, and perhaps you don't like what he does for the office of the President of the United States because it should be more regal or something like that. But he's very funny. He really is very funny.
He is the most entertaining president in the longest time, probably since Reagan. France, you've asked a very deep question about rationality and objectivity. But yeah, not tonight, my good sir. It's 10:15. I've been up since 4:30, and I'm up at 4:30 again tomorrow morning. So I'm actually going to call it an evening. I must admit, Jonathan, just looking at this, we started with a few people, but the stream has been very steady. We've lost absolutely no one during the course of the stream. So yeah, kudos to us, I suppose, and to our viewers. Do you like live streams? Let us know. If we should be able to do this at least once a month, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Because above and beyond the other stuff. Because if people like them, we should do them often. It's as simple as that, of course.
Absolutely. Right. All right. So should we wrap it up? This will be the podcast tomorrow. So if you're listening to this on our normal Tuesday podcast, then thank you for listening. If you, for some reason, want to watch it all over again, it's also on YouTube. You can obviously find us, as always, on Twitter at Renegade_report, always causing a little bit of trouble on Twitter, upsetting everyone. And on Facebook, the page and the group. Ramon is at Roman Cabernac, myself at Jonathan_Witt. Go to renegadereport.co.za to buy some of that merchandise. Just give us 24 hours to fix that shopping link. Ramon will make it happen. And we'll catch you next time.
Yeah, just keep an eye out on Facebook and Twitter when I say that the link is fixed. But really, chaps, if you got $50 a month to spare, please consider. Take money away from Alta and give it to us. For fuck's sakes, they do nothing.
Because it doesn't need your money.
Yeah, and she's left, so stop funding the ANC and fund the Renegade Report. We can do quite a lot with that money. So if every listener donates, we could have quite a lot of money per month. So yes, if you want to see more of us at Renegade_report, Facebook, the group, the WhatsApp group as well, just check Facebook for that. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us. It was quite late this evening, and we do appreciate the fact that you are here. And yes, Martin, the podcast is on Spotify and Google Podcast, and will be there tomorrow. Anyway, good night,
Cheers.
everyone.
Goodbye.
Cheers.
Bye.